Okay, fantastic. So today we're going to talk about best practices with AI and Java. Who am I? Catalin has already told you everything about my life. So I have been an Oracle Java champion for maybe 15 years now. I've been an Intel software innovator since 2018, and I'm the author of these two books. What's the agenda? So we're going to discuss why is ChatGPT a game changer now? We're going to discuss what are some of the basic terms and terminology that you need to be familiar with if you're going to use it programmatically. We're going to talk about what are the models that are available. We're going to take a quick break for some questions. And then in the second half, we're going to show you how to get familiar with the playground. And it's a great way for you to try out prompts to see how things work. Once you understand some of the terms, the playground is one of the best places for you to try things out, especially as a developer. We're going to talk about the importance of the system message. So there are different types of messages you can send as a developer. When you're using the ChatGPT website, you only get to put in a prompt. As a developer, there are several different parameters, but one of them is specifically called the system message. We're going to discuss what is the importance of that message. We're going to wrap things up, and we're going to show how to make a very basic ChatGPT client in Java, and then we're going to show how to make a basic tech support bot. So, as I stated, why is ChatGPT a game changer now? Well, one of the major capabilities is that you can understand unstructured text. You can understand an image. So if you provide it an image, it could be a GIF, a JPEG, it can be a PDF. It can actually describe to you what is inside the image. And then one of the more important things is that when you're building applications for your customers, it's now very easy for you to respond back to your customers in natural language. So before, we would have to use various tools to understand what a customer is saying, and then also other tools to help to respond back to that customer if you wanted to use natural language. For the most part, we don't really do that in our applications, but now we can do all these things. So sometimes when you're building an application, your data is structured. So I believe all of us have built a basic application where we are soliciting for a person's name, their address, where they live, and the postal code. And we, I hate to say this, we force the user to put that information into a field. We then validate what that field is, and we ensure that it is very structured. We put it into a database, sometimes a relational database, and then we query it using SQL, which literally means structured query language. But then other times, your data is unstructured. So in those cases, a customer may provide, for instance, in the case for tech support, they can say, hello, my name is X, I live here, I come from this city, my postal code is this. that data is unstructured. So for before the advent of these AI tools, getting unstructured data is a nightmare for a developer because then we have to parse this, we have to find out what these elements are. Some of you that are doing NLP, we have to do entity recognition to actually find out, okay, is this a name? Is this a place? So it was a lot of work beforehand, and dealing with unstructured data for the most part, many companies just ignore it. They don't really do much with it because there's so much effort just to get out just some of the basic information. With ChatGPT, all of that has completely changed. So, what are some of the basic terms and the terminology that you need to understand when you're starting to develop these applications, these nearly intelligent applications? Well, the good news is that there's only a few terms that you need to be familiar with. Well, actually, it's not a few terms. It's more like this. So there are so many terms. There are so many parameters. There are so many options available. It's almost overwhelming. So for the purpose for this talk, let's just reduce things down to these three because for obvious reasons, understanding all 30 parameters is not the purpose for this talk. We do want to have something we can get working in a very simple way. So we're going to talk about models, we're going to talk about tokens, and we're going to talk about the temperature, okay? So what is a model? So just to break things down very simply, it is a pre-trained model is a neural network that has been trained on a specific task or a data set, okay? The training process involves exposing that model to annotated data, and that just simply means it has been labeled and categorized for a specific task. So to give a more specific explanation, when you've already used ChatGPT, you've been seeing some of these terms already. You see the first model, which was GPT-3, 3.5. Now we have GPT-4, 4.0, 4.0 mini. The mini models tend to be faster, and then you have the O1 versions. But they also have models for audio. So you have GPT-4.0 real time. This one allows you to essentially create a chat bot very similar to if you actually had the Chat GPT application on your phone. GPT-4.0, the audio version, however, allows you to understand and to send back and forth audio files. Whisper allows you to take an audio file and to get a very good transcript with support for over 50 languages. TTS and TTS, the HD version, allow you to produce speech by just providing a textual prompt. For some of you that have tried creating an image programmatically, you may have heard of the DALL-E 2 and the DALL-E 3 models. And then we also have the moderation models. By default, if you're going to use any of the moderation models, and let me just say this, the moderation models enable a developer to understand if there's any textual content. The Omni model also supports images, where if you have content that is not good or safe for a community or for a workplace. So it will find if there is textual content that is sexual, that has hate messages, that has threatening messages, anything of that sort, where if you're actually building a community and you don't want negative content, you can actually use one of the moderation models to actually flag content that is hurtful. So now that we talked about models, let's talk about tokens. Now, the first thing as a developer, if you are thinking, okay, I've already used APIs. I know what a token is. Well, not really. So when you're dealing with open AI APIs, a token is not an API access token. From their perspective, a token is simply a fraction of a word, and it's really about 3 to 4 characters. Now, as a Java developer, if you've used the string tokenizer, and almost every one of us have, you understand that that's what it actually means. So it allows you to get a fraction of a string of characters. So from the perspective of AI, it's just 3 to 4 characters and it's broken up from a larger part of a word. Now, the last thing we're going to discuss is about temperature. The temperature parameter is completely about creativity. What does that mean? If you so the temperature can be set between 0 and 2. So if you set it really, really low, which is near 0, you will have very non-creative responses. If you set it really, really high, which is 2, you're going to have very random responses. So you can allow ChatGPT to be a bit more creative depending upon what your use case is. How to get started. So for most of us, we've already been here. You've been to the ChatGPT website, and you have some ability to actually see what the model is. You can type in a prompt, but that's not really, it doesn't allow you to actually do anything programmatically. So you may have had some experience with it, but it doesn't enable you to do things programmatically. Now, before I actually show how to use the playground, I do want to say one thing. I have a huge problem with the term prompt engineering. And the reason why is that you have various websites, you have other books, you have people that will charge you subscription plans. I'm pretty sure that there are YouTube videos that all talk about prompt engineering, and they're going to convince you that you can do proper prompt engineering just by simply typing in a very creative message to ChatGPT. And my problem is that, but what about all of these parameters that I told you? So you not only have the prompt, but you also have tokens, you have messages, which is an array. You have the service tier, you have the store, you have the seed ID. You can set the maximum tokens. There are so many other parameters that you can only do when you are doing this from a development perspective. So the biggest issue that I have is that every website is telling you prompt engineering can only, well, can be done simply by just putting in something here, which is quite silly. So how can you do it better? Well, what you need to do is go to the chat playground. And what it allows you to do is to start your path on prompt engineering. So let's cover what kind of things you can do here, because this is nearly a one-to-one perspective of what you get from the API, but it's condensed to make things a bit more simpler for you. So I must state, however, that there are four types of messages. The first one is called the system message. And what the purpose of it is that you explain to ChatGPT its role in the conversation. You can only do this once, okay? Next is the user message, item number 2. This is your main question or the content that you want to provide to ChatGPT. The third is called the assistant message. And from the first time using this, you're going to ask yourself, why would I need to type in what ChatGPT has already told me? The purpose is that because this is a REST API and it is completely stateless, you must remind ChatGPT information that it has already gave you. So if you need to continue a conversation programmatically through your Java applications, this is the point where you provide, you've already told me this, now let's continue from this point because it is completely stateless. The fourth type is not covered here in the playground, but it's called a tool message. That's for a bit more advanced applications. Now, the other features available in the playground. The item number 4 is the add message. What this button simply allows you to do is to add a new user or assistant message to your conversation. The point of the playground here is to give you the capability without writing code yet to try out your system messages, user messages, your prompts, try out some of the other parameters before you actually get things down into the code. However, once you try things out, you have this. Button number 5, view code. If you're using either Python, Node.js, or curl, you can actually click here after you tried out your prompts. You can actually see how to invoke the API because they will actually provide you all of the source code. However, Java is not supported, but this feature is still useful for us, and I will explain later on. Number 6 is the model. So the interface here is geared toward those textual models. And you can select any of the models through here. Item number 7, there it is right there. Item number 7 is the temperature. Item number 8 is the length of the tokens. So my recommendation is that when you are actually ready to start adding intelligence to your applications, that you should actually bootstrap your own ChatGPT client. Here's why. There are a few companies, there are a few development teams that are creating unofficial Java libraries. And there's one company, which is Microsoft. They decided to bundle the OpenAI client inside of in the Microsoft Azure Java library. Unfortunately, it's gigabytes in size. It contains a client for the open AI APIs, but unfortunately, when you're just trying to try out ChatGPT programmatically, 99.99% of it you don't need because it has everything bundled with Azure. And some of the other libraries they actually try to apply object-oriented programming paradigms to a stateless REST API. So from my perspective, and this is just my own opinion, a lot of them have a bit more bloat than what I would prefer, and they don't really give me more grained, fine-grained access to the simple REST API. So by making your own client, basically, if you want, you can actually make things as very simple with a single class, and I will show you how to do so. And then the best thing here is that depending on your company and how you do things, you choose the dependencies that you want. And that's one of the biggest things here, because from my perspective, when you are architecting applications, it's a very important thing to choose. Do I want this particular library as a part of my packaging, as a part of my product, or not? Because every library that the architect decides says, yes, this is something that we need, you have to be familiar with it, because eventually you're going to be providing your own tech support. So it's not advisable just to say, well, it's only a few gigabytes. How bad could that be? Ensuring that you have the dependencies that you want to support is ideal. So what does it take to actually build your own ChatGPT client? This is the prompt that I used, and in the links, you'll see everything about how to do this. But this is very, very simple. The system prompt, I basically said, you are a Java developer. The user prompt was this: convert the following curl command to Java. Make sure that the URL and the API keys are variables. I want to use the Jackson library to create the JSON object in the request. Name the class this name. Create any helper classes if necessary. This curl command came from step 5 within the playground. So I basically had no effort to do whatsoever. And this is the result. It allows me to only have the Jackson APIs as my dependency, and I have a basic client that allows me and my team to support. We can then take this and then extend this for our own purposes, for the purpose of trying things out to see, okay, is this something that we want to develop and to bootstrap on our own? You can have a very simple client, and you don't have to have the need to have an additional library that you will also eventually support. The best part of it is that for our purposes, we only have a single class for just this basic version. You can, of course, extend things out. One of the things that I did personally was all of the Jackson mapping. I actually separated those inner classes out to specific file classes on the file system. That was one small change. But that, if you want, you can have this done in a single class. So let's go to the final steps of this talk, which is we're going to create a basic tech support bot in Java.
We have a question, Bruce.
Go right ahead, please.
How mini and non-mini models differ?
The mini model, so let me back up to that point. Well, actually, it's actually quite a few slides back. One of the biggest differences, so if I can just restate the question here, what are the differences between the mini models and the non-mini ones? So typically, OpenAI will have a textual model because they don't really use many for any of the images or the audio or the moderation models. So if you are working as an input and an output as text, the mini models are typically made to be smaller and therefore faster. So if the response time is an important thing to you, you may want to use the mini models. However, if you want more time for the model to think of a more complete answer and you aren't really concerned about time, then you should use the non-mini model. The other item is that every model comes with a cost. I don't have the exact pricing in front of me right now, but let's just say for, I think, 1 million tokens, which is books and books of information. But for 1 million tokens, I believe the cost is 15 US dollars for the mini models. And I believe the mini models are cheaper than the normal models. But what I'm going to say is your best advice is to go to the ChatGPT, the OpenAI website, because their pricing always changes. And typically their prices are lower as time goes by. So when we were initially in the book creating these applications using GPT 3.5, GPT-4 is 100 times cheaper. GPT 4.0 is cheaper. The mini models are also cheaper. Did that answer your question? Okay, thank you. So let's talk about the tech support bot. So the goal is simple. So every developer I know absolutely loves doing tech support. We all do. I know we all love it. Don't lie. I know you love it. The biggest problem with tech support um, is the fact that sometimes customers really do not understand how to express what their problems are. And it's also inefficient to have the experienced senior developers to not, I don't want to say waste time, but to spend time doing tech support. So what I created is a simple an architecture that keeps things very, very simple. Anyone can produce a frequently asked questions text file. The goal is to take that simple text file, which can be done by anybody on the team. It can be done by the product manager. It can be done by the QA team. It can be done by any of the junior engineers. But you have a simple text file and have the bot to study that and answer questions in a tech support channel. For the purpose of this test, I used Discord. And one of the major things that the goal was to allow the end user to ask their questions using natural language and then have the system to understand it and then to respond back. So this is what I've actually did. When I type in something saying, hi, I am new to this channel, what kind of questions can I ask? The bot responds back extremely quickly within a few seconds, and it tells you everything that you can do. But let's break it down a little bit more. So what was the system message I provided? To start things off, I said, you are a virtual assistant that provides support for the Crooks banking application. Now let's talk a little bit more about the system message. Again, the purpose of it is that, well, first of all, you can only set this once in your conversation, and you are telling ChatGPT what its role is in the conversation. So It can be anything. You can say you are an economist, you are a chef, you are a blogger. You're giving it the context, you are specifying how it needs to think and to respond. So what was the second thing I provided? Well, I provided a frequently asked questions text file. There's no point to actually read the whole text file here, but let's just talk about what were the main things. So this was what I provided. I specified what is the app with the answer. How can I download it with the answer? Question 3, is the mobile app safe with the answer? Question 4, what features does the bank app offer? And the answer, account management, transfers, bill payments. I want to point out that it is a mobile banking application. You're going to understand why I highlighted this. So that's part 2. Part 3, can I link external accounts? And the answer, can I reset my password? Question number 7, what are the fees? Question number 8, can I get customer support through the app? Okay, answers there. And then 2 more, is the app available for business? Yes. And then how can I provide feedback? So this is a detailed question and answers that I created. It's a simple, frequently asked questions. So let's talk about what the results were. Let's talk about conversation number 1. So when the user typed in, hi, I am new to this channel. What kind of questions can I ask? The system responds back and it basically summarizes the types of things that were already in the frequently asked questions. Okay, so far, so good. Second question, I have an old BlackBerry phone. I honestly, I used to have one, but I don't know where it is now. Is the app supported on my device? The system responds back in the Discord channel, I'm sorry, but unfortunately, it's only supported for iOS and Android. So far, so good. Now, when I typed in, so if I use an iPhone, how do I set up the app? Now, this is where, unfortunately, things go wrong. It tells me to open the App Store, perfectly fine. Search for it using Crooks Bank mobile app, perfectly fine. Download it, great. After the app downloads, open the app, sounds good. It then later tells me once you have logged in, you can set up Touch ID or Face ID for a quicker, secure login in the future. Now, that's really, 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 really bad. Because I did not say anything in the frequently asked questions. I did not say anything that a person can use Face ID. Now, mind you, Touch ID is actually now built in only for Mac laptops. So this feature doesn't even make sense. And of course, to log in with your face, that feature does not exist because we didn't say that we did it. So unfortunately, in its current state right now, that's not good. It's not good for tech support. However, there's a very small change. Remember I said the importance of the system message. The system message, you tell ChatGPT what its role is in the conversation. So the original system message says you are a virtual assistant that provides support, and it assumes that it's going to have the liberty to make things up and to hallucinate. It feels comfortable just to say, well, I assume that you support face and touch ID. But unfortunately, this system message is not sufficient. So what we have to do is basically do this. Okay, so the updated system message just says this: you are a virtual assistant, you provide support for this app, you'll be provided information about the app, and users will ask you questions about the application. Your role is to answer questions explicitly from the training information. Literally, you have to answer it only from the information provided in the frequently asked questions. If you were not given an answer to a question, then provide an apologetic message to the user explaining that you do not know the answer. So the original is now this, where you're specifically saying you do not have the ability, you do not have the freedom to make things up. So how did things go the second time? So this time I tried something slightly different and I said, okay, how are you today? The bot in Discord says, well, as a virtual assistant, I don't have feelings, but I'm here and I am ready to assist you. Okay, so far, so good. Second question, I have an old BlackBerry phone. Is the app supported? The answer, I'm sorry, but from the information provided, it can only be for iOS and for Android. Very good. Now for the question that tripped it up the previous time. So if I use an iPhone, how do I set up the application? Now the answer is to set it up. You can download it from the App Store. Search for it with the name, click the install button. After the installation is finished, open the app, follow the prompts to set up your account. And that is perfect because that's the information that we told it in the frequently asked questions. So right now, by simply changing the system changing the system message, it answers exactly everything from there, and it does not invent or to hallucinate anything. So from my perspective, good bot. So to wrap things up, what did we learn? So we talked about why ChatGPT is a game changer now. The biggest reasons is that your applications can now be artificially intelligent, whereas before it's been a bit difficult, especially understanding the content that's inside an image and also processing content, processing text that is natural language. We also talked about some of the basic terms and the terminology. So there are at least 30 terms, there are 30 parameters when you're invoking models. But you can go pretty far if you understand about models, temperatures, and tokens. We talked about some of the models that are available. For the purposes of the ChatGPT tech support bot, I was using GPT 3.5 and then I changed to GPT 4, but both are text models. It doesn't really matter. We talked about how to get familiar with the playground. I showed you what's the simplest way to make a basic ChatGPT client on your own, and I highly recommend bootstrap your own. You can have something that you can support that is not a nightmare. And then once one of the biggest things is that OpenAI changes their library multiple times per year, and they're adding new features. You don't want to be stuck with a library that you need to update on your own and then try to synchronize changes with the the owner, um, it's highly recommended. The API is not that difficult. As you saw, you can bootstrap your own client and have a single class if you want it, or at least 4 to 5 classes just to make things modular. Last of all, we created a basic tech support bot in Java. All the source code is in the GitHub link that was provided earlier, and it's going to be resent out. But all the source code, how to access Discord in 100% Java. It's a simple class that allows you to do all of the Discord management and then working with OpenAI to do all of the questions and the answers. And then finally, we talked about the importance of the system message, and in which I cannot stress enough that you can get vastly different responses just by changing that one single parameter, which again, it goes back to the discussion about what is prompt engineering. You can't possibly do prompt engineering without having access to all the parameters. And that system message there allows you to say, okay, this is your role in this conversation. And once ChatGPT has been told what its role is, it actually does quite well. So these resources have been sent into the channel. There's a step-by-step guide which I wrote, which was published this year. It goes over a lot more use cases about how to use ChatGPT for your applications, but also all the source code is completely free. So please download everything, try things out. I definitely love to hear your feedback. And on that note, we can open the floor up for more questions.